All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm just Mopar Joe. Today is the big 426 Hemi crate engine startup day. New heads, new intake, new pistons, everything's been stepped up. So I want to get this camshaft broken in today. We will be on the dyno very soon. So most of y'all are probably aware, if you watch my channel at all, this is the first Hemi that I've ever strapped to my engine run stand. And I'm still proud of my run stand. It does a great job. But an issue that we might run into for the dyno is the distance between these two headers. So the dyno cell itself, whatever's behind there, the bell housing hooks to, you got to be able to have clearance between the headers. I'm thinking right now, this may be too narrow. So I'm going to call Brad at Kuntz and get their measurement and be sure. We'll be able to run it with these today or tomorrow, whenever. One thing I had to adapt, I did have him bring his engine mounts so that I could run my crossbars like that. Our plugs are in now. I just finished pouring oil in it. I was down 1 quart. Here's what we're using for oil. This is the comp break-in oil. ZDDP enhanced. And I got that baby in there now. Good to go. I thought about starting and running this with my AED carburetor. I've got the 850 from my race car. Put it on here and run. I know it's fairly close and will be nice to us because we need this to fire off very quickly. So Rick left it on top dead center now. I'll be able to run our wires and that sort of stuff. I just want to get everything in action here to be able to. Got our intermediate shaft in since we're on top dead center. See, it's right. I went ahead and went 10 before, or a little more, whatever. I got that lined up forward and backwards, and we're gonna see how it turns out with our rotor pointing number 1. But right now we got a choice of 2 distributors. Let's look at them. They look basically like stock style Mopar units. I did notice with this one, I believe it was that one. It's pretty difficult to turn. Like, there's 3 or 4 pounds of torque to turn that baby. We don't really like that. And another thing, so stock style distributor here, very large advanced gap. I'm assuming this is the one that came in the crate engine when they got it. There we go. Pretty large. Springs are pretty stiff too. So we're not going to run that one to start with. Number 2, this is kind of more of a tricked out unit. And it's just like the fire core is on the inside. You can stick your screwdriver through. There we are. See the slotted hole? And set your advance. So that's really nice for us, especially now that we've got more compression in this. We're getting closer to 11-1 or something. It will be nice if the thing's hard to start, we can just take it right out. Also, much lighter springs. That's our baby right there. So let me stick him in and see how it goes. I went ahead and oriented this baby just like they had it previously. And I could tell from those scratch marks down there in this distributor. His number 1 is on the front side, just this side of that clip. And I went ahead and lined up our rotor as well. Some people call it phasing or whatever you want to say, for our 12 degrees or 15, whatever we're at here. So this should start, bam, fire right up at 2,000. We're going to add about 10 or 15. We should be around 30-ish. I'll have my timing light ready. Do the whole shebang like I always do. Filling her up with water. I really don't think that water pump has a gasket in there. Best I can tell, that's where it's leaking. So I'll start draining and pull that off and stick a gasket on. I don't know. I remember now, I think. So the owner of this engine, yeah, they were having overheating issues after the last rebuild. So he gave me a couple options for water pumps. This one was already bolted into the housing, and it looks just kind of like a stock style replacement water pump, which is what I would run until, you know, you saw a problem otherwise or something. I believe it was because their issue was because their head gasket was in the wrong orientation, or it was the wrong gasket that blocked off some certain holes. We're going to find out, but these bolts are all through holes, so you have to put sealant on those bolts as well. So I'll get her sealed up. We are sealed up again. You'll see my little belt. You basically just got to roll it on here. I'm going to try to keep my thumb out of the way, see if it will do its own thing. Just like that. I found a common theme with this thing. See that thermostat housing? It's leaking water right now. I don't think there's a gasket under that either. Maybe he told me that 100 years ago. He did clean all that stuff up and have it separate from the engine so I could just bolt it on. But we're going to pull the thermostat out of it right now because for the dyno, they don't want a restriction there. They want that baby flowing and going. I lucked out. He had one of those nice thermostat housings that had an O-ring in it. So all I had to do, take the bolts out, pop that thermostat out, bolt it right back down. We are now full of water. You can see that shininess there. And I got to hook up my timing light, and now we're going to start this baby. I did go ahead and check for fire early on just by plugging another distributor into my cable here. I've made myself an adapter to adapt to the Mopar plug-in to my MSD. So I'll need to bring that baby with us to the dyno because all they have is MSD stuff there. So we're getting closer once again. Here's our 426 Crate Hemi first start. See how she goes. That scared the piss out of me. Let me go ahead and hold my timing light. I got it ran kind of goofy here. Pounds, jump straight up on oil pressure. I like it. You know what it is. about 15 minutes in. We're about 210 degrees. I didn't have my fan ready in front of this, but sometimes you can luck out and it'll be fine. But so we got about 15 minutes on a break-in so far. We have now moved up to the upper level because I had to roll under here. And if you see that spot in the floor there, I've just wiped it all up. I at first thought, oh no, is this a rear main seal leak? But I remember this is a fast fish seal, and I still believe in them with my whole heart. But what is not fast fish are these oil pan gaskets and a timing cover gasket. But you'll have that kind of thing on these big jobs. Anyway, I've got all this wiped down. I had trails running down the outside of this pan. I went around and touched the pan up about a quarter of a turn on all of these. These are not cork gaskets. They are kind of a black composite or something. And I didn't go crazy with RTV like I typically would because y'all judge me for it. But I did do around the corners nicely, you know, bridge my gap for my caps, or for my cap corner. You can see a squish out right there up here in the front. But this little corner, one of these corners was wet before I ever started the engine, and that just kind of told me something's seeping just a little bit. So I went around and tightened those before I ever ran it. You know, front cover bolts, just snugged them, nothing crazy. And then, you know, my front 4 bolts for the pan. A lot of people like studs. A lot of people like studs with lock nuts. Mopar came with this from the factory, and it did just fine. We used bolts on that 580 that I just dynoed, and that was the driest engine I've ever seen in my life. When it came off the dyno, I had to double check the oil to be sure it had oil because it was so dry. So my goal right now is I'll fire it back up, run our 5 minutes. If it's actively leaking while it's running, which if we look in our bell, usually the bell is the telltale about a rear main. And it is dry, it's bone dry. See fast fish sticking through? There's a little bit of moisture or oil there, I guess. Anyway, there's a little bit of oil right there on that seam of the gasket, but there's not a trail running down right here. When I rub my fingers across the back of the crank flange, they're dry on the tips, but they're wet right there. And that still makes me believe something is a little spooky going on in there. I can, while it's in here, I could get through that hole and pop this baby off in case one of those goofy plugs was leaking up there. But just one of those things you do, you check, and you move on with life. That is, after you fix it, of course. Also, you may notice that little puddle of oil. That happened in the amount of time it took me to jack the rear of this thing up. I jacked the rear up first. I came around and jacked the front up. And while the rear was jacked up, that oil came out right there. Something's a little fishy going on. And I really do believe my fans are probably blowing whatever oil is leaking onto the back till it finds a happy drip spot. I still owe the engine 5 more minutes of break-in time on the cam. I'm at 2,400, 2,500 RPM, 32 degrees of timing. Every so often I'll rev it. I'll bring it lower, I'll bring it higher. I'm not getting over like 2,800. That seems pretty excessive, but I'm not going below 2,000. We're at 150 degrees right now. Let's fire it up. We are pressurized with about 2 pounds. One. Needed a little more RTV right there. But 2, soapy water. Anybody see that bubble? Other side is dry as a bone. That baby right there. Our seal's not leaking at all. I sprayed all the way around him. I even laid down and looked up here with a flashlight. That blows my mind. Well, there she is. Pan's off. And one major reason I can call this a good day, if you sit down and think about it, we broke in a modern flat tappet cam with no failure. We have excellent oil pressure. Our engine starts, runs, revs, sounds great. We just had a few little leaky problems, but something more spectacular than all of that jazz is what's inside the pan. And the answer is basically nothing. There's a few little shiny, see there? But we had to, we're breaking rings in, all kinds of stuff. But that's always a silver lining of having to pull a pan after any kind of run time, is that you can clean it out. But spoiler alert, there wasn't much to clean out. So overall, not a bad day in the Mopar land. I appreciate y'all watching. You'll have some setbacks sometimes in building engines and life and whatever. You just conquer it and keep going. So thank y'all for watching. I'll catch you next time. All right, Mopar people.